Welcome into a special edition of the State of Recruiting podcast. I am Horns 24/7 managing editor Taylor Estes, sitting in this week for Horns 24/7 recruiting analyst Mike Roach, who is taking some time for his wedding anniversary. But I am joined, as always, by Horns 24/7 recruiting analyst Hudson Standish. And Hudson, we have a lot to talk about on this emergency edition of the State of Recruiting podcast. There's not many emergency editions, but usually when they drop, it's a good sign. So, Hudson, why don't you tell us why this is a good sign for this drop in early this week?
Yeah, no, it's great news. Texas addressed a major position of need in the linebacker spot with gaining a commitment from North Crowley three-star linebacker S'Maje Burrell. It is one of the better developments, I'd say, of the 2023 cycle, getting him to shut down. And I'd say, honestly, it's probably the best when you marry his talent and potential need. I think it's the best commitment of the class so far. I mean, this is a guy that had offers from Ohio State, Florida, Oklahoma was pursuing heavily, and Texas linebacker coach Jeff Choate and Texas director of high school relations Chris Gilbert really did a fantastic job recruiting Burrell and got him to shut down his recruitment early and get off his timeline. It's fantastic news for the Longhorns.
Yeah, this gives Texas their currently their third as time that we record this, their third verbal commitment in the 2023 class. All of them on the defensive side of the ball. Hudson, and just kind of looking at this commitment. Obviously, you mentioned Ohio State being one of the contenders for S'Maje Burrell. As we talked on the State of Recruiting podcast that dropped on Friday, he did cancel his Ohio State visit. So it sounds like this was in the works for a little bit of time. What can you tell us from some of the behind the scenes, details that went into not only him canceling that visit, but then, pulling the trigger and committing to Texas early?
Yeah, so Mike immediately from the visit weekend heard, okay, so this went really well with S'Maje from a couple of sources. And then we both started, checking the phones, and sure enough, there was a ton of good news. So Mike went out to North Crowley on Monday and Tuesday. We were able to kind of get the scoop. S'Maje was okay with us putting in crystal balls, so we put in, crystal ball predictions immediately, and it kind of just unfolded from there to the point to where S'Maje was originally going to take the Ohio State visit because they had the, tickets and everything already, but then they just decided, okay, we know it's going to be Texas. Let's visit this weekend. Let's help the Longhorns build something special in the 2023 class. And he went ahead and pulled the trigger on the commitment. And Taylor, I think that it's one of those ones, even though he is rated as a three-star, and like national recruiting analyst Gabe Brooks likes to say, three stars are good players too. Just because he's a three-star, don't think that it's a knock on him or anything. He's a fantastic football player. But when you look at the schools that were pursuing him heavily in the Ohio States, the Oklahomas of the world, Florida, I think you do get the sense that he's a guy that maybe is being recruited by programs above where his current ranking is. I think that Texas fans, especially considering the position that it's at, should be absolutely ecstatic with this commitment.
Yeah, and honestly, obviously, recruiting ratings and rankings matter, but there's only a certain number of players that are going to be 5 and 4 stars. And let's be honest, Hudson, I mean, Texas has probably had more success in developing 3-star type of level of recruits into eventual NFL draft picks. I mean, you look at the two offensive linemen that Texas has had drafted in the last, number of years were 3-star, very, very under the radar type of prospects, and Connor Williams and then Sam Cosmi too. I mean, those were the diamond in the rough type of guys. And you're right. I think a lot of times Texas fans can get really, or fans in general, not just Texas fans, college football recruiting junkies that love to follow it, get really into it's a 3-star, he must not be that good. But I think especially at Texas recently, that they've really proven that wrong, that sometimes these 3-star prospects are way, have a higher ceiling, I think, than a lot of the 4 and 5 stars that they don't necessarily get the credit for. And when you look at the offer list and everything, I think that should stand alone too, in the type of caliber of talent that these coaching staffs at these D1 powerhouse type of programs are looking at.
Absolutely, Taylor. And I think another thing to mention too is it's still pretty early in the rankings process. So, I think that something that a lot of Texas fans, not a lot, but some Texas recruiting fans kind of got caught red-handed on last year was when a guy like Ethan Burke flips on signing day from, Michigan to Texas. And that is on signing day. And it's like, oh my God, he's a three-star. Why are we taking bread? Well, by the time that Ethan Burke actually, starts to get properly evaluated because he's a late riser, he ends up being a four-star guy that, is ranked higher than a lot of edges. So even though S'Maje is a three-star right now on 247 and a couple other sites, I think that he is a guy I'd be pretty shocked at considering his testing and production. If by the end of the cycle he wasn't a four-star and potentially even a top 247 caliber guy. So you never want to go so hard on, rankings discussion, kind of stargazing, that you overlook the fact that Texas beat out Ohio State and Oklahoma for a, linebacker in a state that normally doesn't produce linebackers on the same level that it does quarterbacks, receivers, defensive backs. I mean, it's just a fantastic development, and a lot of credit needs to go to the Texas staff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think especially with Ohio State being one of those contenders, I mean, how many times have Texas fans been kind of upset at the number of elite prospects in the state of Texas that have gone to the Ohio States or the Alabamas or outside of state lines because Texas didn't do, a solid enough job recruiting them. I think that you can never underestimate that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So obviously a big win for Jeff Choate and Pete Kwiatkowski in the defensive side of the ball. Chris Gilbert, as you mentioned, was also instrumental in this. Let's kind of talk about the inside linebacker type of position, Hudson. I think with Texas not really having a huge emphasis on that role in the 2022 recruiting cycle, adding one of their 3 early commitments being an inside linebacker. Is that some sort of indication of the priority that this Texas staff and Jeff Choate is putting on adding to the talent at that role?
Yeah, absolutely, Taylor. I think that's a great point. Like you mentioned, they only took one true inside linebacker and Travell Johnson from Arlington Martin last year. And they took Derek Brown, who we've kind of heard might be a little bit of a tweener between an inside backer or an edge. So we'll kind of see from there. But as Mike and I have reported, we believe that there's going to be 3 spots at inside backer. And the 3 guys that they want in those spots, primarily in state, with respect to I'm Leona Leafow from Kahaku, Hawaii. It's Anthony Hill, who's a consensus 5-star. It's Darian Gillette, who has offers from Alabama. Texas A&M is a stud from Marlin. And then S'Maje was part of that big 3 in-state as well. I wrote about it earlier this week. But getting one of those top 3 targets in a spot where for sure you're taking 3 was just massive, considering that Texas didn't really address inside linebacker at the level that they wanted in the 2022 cycle. And what we were talking about pre-show, as you mentioned, with likely DeMarvion Overshown gone and kind of a weaker group that's already on campus with respect to guys like Jalen Ford and David Benda, it's massive to get somebody like S'Maje Burrell that coaches around the state, sources, and player personnel at the next level really believe is a high caliber inside linebacker.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that anybody that follows both Texas recruiting and Texas, team football stuff would know that linebacker, while obviously DeMarvion Overshown returning in 2022 was a huge addition, it was, I think, also very a good thing for him to do also, because I think he's going to, with a solid season, he's going to improve his draft stock. But he is, this is his last year of eligibility. And the linebacker, I mean, a lot of times people say the linebacker is the quarterback of the defense, and the quarterback is the most important, probably position in all of sports, not just football. And Texas has been a little limited there for a while. So, that's interesting to hear. They're looking for at least 3 at that position. Do you think that's going to maybe take some of the angry fans off of Jeff Choate's back a little bit after not really making it too much of a priority in 2022?
I never want to speak for the angry fans because I'm worried that they'll turn on me, but
Smart,
I
very
hope it
smart.
does. I hope it does because he is doing he did a great job with S'Maje Burrell, and I think they've been evaluating their second tier targets at inside linebacker really well as in addition. Guys like Javen Anderson and Jonathan Hall and Bryson Washington, who are kind of the high school safeties that spin down into the linebacker spot at the next level. That's a really smart tactic that Big 12 teams and, even a guy like Gary Patterson, who's now on staff at Texas, has been using for a while. And seeing Texas employ that in the 23 cycle gave me a lot of encouragement that things are trending the right way at that spot. And Taylor, you mentioned the linebacker being the quarterback of the defense. While it is a cliche, as somebody who played quarterback at the high school level and is kind of scheme junkie, it's the absolute truth. And having that football obsessed guy like S'Maje Burrell out there calling signals is going to help the Texas defense considerably once he's ready to play. I think that's something that a lot of fans kind of are attracted to when it comes to recruiting is, okay, don't give me the guy that's all traits and he has to, get developed. And there are a lot of, give me the guy who's really productive, who is a kind of junkyard dog type, who is just going to know how to play football and play the linebacker position, especially the second he gets on campus. And that's a S'Maje Burrell. You're talking about a guy who in 11 games had 100 plus tackles and is just known as being a football obsessed guy that is just going to immediately be able to contribute to a team. So high floor take that I think has a great ceiling as well. It's a fantastic development for Texas fans.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of almost Byron Murphy. I know it's a different position, but when Byron Murphy committed to Texas, um, he was kind of an not too highly touted type of recruit, but he made noise in year one more so than I think a lot of people acknowledge. And he, from everything that Mike reported last year, he was kind of. It sounds like he and S'Maje Burrell are kind of similar with all they want to do is just be the best at playing football. They want to
Absolutely.
prove everybody wrong, maybe being under the radar or like not as highly rated or whatever it may be. And Byron Murphy did that. I mean, is that an accurate kind of comparison? Is that a little bit too
I
early to say?
definitely see the vision with that take, especially when you consider okay, they have the high school production, but maybe not the traits that would get them to the NFL. I think that S'Maje could be an NFL linebacker, to be completely honest. Whereas, Byron Murphy, I think that he probably has that sort of potential too. But when evaluators were looking at him, it was okay, he's 5'10", and ignoring the fact that he was DeSoto High School's all-time leading sack leader. I mean, when you think about people that are able to, schools that produce guys that are able to rush the quarterback, DeSoto should be the first school that comes to mind with guys like Von Miller. So I think
The
that it's
Dallas
one of
area in general too. I mean, Miles
exactly.
Garrett's out there, like yeah.
Exactly. So I definitely see the vision with that take. And at the end of the day, it's just one that Texas fans should be absolutely giddy about.
Yeah. Well, that is always good information there, and I think more junkyard dogs that Texas can get on defense, especially, the better. I think offensive line's got to add a little bit more, in defensive line too. But I think you're starting to kind of see the vision of this Texas coaching staff in 2022, and now kind of feeding over in 2023.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Taylor. You're finally seeing kind of without any sort of COVID restrictions or anything else kind of bogging down the full visit, and just also having kind of a year under their belts too of knowing, okay, this is how you recruit at Texas. This is kind of what we want. I think that's a great point. The Texas staff seems to have their feet underneath them, and they had a really nice addition to the 2023 class.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Here's, I think, for all Texas fans' sanity, hoping that the next step can be taken on the football field, obviously in 2022.
Absolutely.
Seeing that development that these coaches were hired at Texas for. But Hudson, before we go, is there anything else that you think is important to kind of address with the commitment of S'Maje Burrell, or anything moving forward coming off of this commitment?
I appreciate you asking that, Taylor, because up until now, I hadn't thought about this, but here is actually a kind of interesting nugget for S'Maje Burrell. So he's from North Crowley, which is from the Fort Worth area. He previously played for Courtney Allen, who is one of Chris Gilbert, the Texas Director of High School Relations, direct descendants on the coaching tree. And he's now coached by Ray Gates. And while that is all, great and good, he's originally from Marlin, Texas. He grew up in Marlin a little bit and has a pretty tight relationship with fellow Texas inside linebacker priority Darian Gillette. So with S'Maje now in the boat, I'm kind of curious if S'Maje and then also Jere Bledsoe, who's now on Texas's campus, if they start to push Darian Gillette to stay close to home, even with Alabama and Texas A&M looking really good for him as well. So that's something I'd keep an eye on if I were Texas fans, that relationship.
This is exactly why you not only subscribe to Horns 24/7, but make sure you always tune into the State of Recruiting podcast, because you never know what type of nuggets you're going to get. Hudson, obviously great stuff here. I appreciate you letting me kind of take over Mike's role and just feeding, giving you this platform here, since I'm
No,
not the
thank you,
recruiting
Taylor. I
analyst.
definitely couldn't have done it without you. You're the hero behind the scenes of every Horns 247 podcast, and I'm just happy that we were able to knock out a couple State of Recruiting while Mike was on vacation too. So, been a ton of fun. Thank you so much.
Hey, anytime. And I appreciate that. But for Hudson Standish, I am Taylor Estes. We will see you over at horns247.com.